Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Balls in Your Face Marketing. I have with me a gentleman that I've known for quite some time, but it's been a while since we've been able to coordinate this meeting. Stapho Thienpont. He is one of the nicest guys I've ever seen on the web. I mean, he's a guy who speaks from the heart. He's the co-founder of the Marketing Family. He created the very first LinkedIn training through Messenger. He's a LinkedIn leads generation mastermind, able to speak on a wide variety of subjects. I see him interviewed left, right, and center, so it's nice to finally have you on the show. Welcome to the show.
It's so nice to be here, Julian. Yeah, and it's been a while since we managed to talk. I think the last time we talked was we were working together with Tulane and Casey.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. That is the last time, which goes back probably almost 2 years ago, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I've been following your content. I see you commenting on mine. So we've been going back and forth. So this is long overdue. And you got a lot of insights in the industry. So let's talk about that training one, though, because that was kind of a neat little thing that you did in the past. And I hear you got a new one that you're cooking up.
Yeah. So what we did back in the day was we figured like, okay, so there's a certain amount of proven actions that will get you to win on LinkedIn. Like there's a few things you can do every single day. And if you just do them consistently, you will generate leads, you will garnish a little bit more, you will get a little bit more famous, you will get a little bit more respect and personal branding, right? So instead of putting everything together in like one place, like, okay, here's how you do it from start to finish, we just gave them a little tip every day through a messenger bot and told them like, okay, do this, do this, do this, do this. We learned a lot from running that course, mainly that people don't like to do this so much because the messenger messages, they kind of like interrupt your day, and if it's too much, you start tuning them out. But we also learned that actually it works. Like the stuff that we've been teaching, it works. Like one of the students back then, she now actually has her own LinkedIn agency where they help people with personal branding and that sort of thing. So we figured out that the core of what we're teaching works and that we can get people to become like LinkedIn thought leaders. Mm-hmm. Just that the way we put it out there wasn't like the most pleasant way for people to
okay. So are you pulling away from Messenger? I mean, I've heard anecdotally from a few people that, you know, certainly in the early days of Messenger bots, in particular on Facebook, you know, people were like, this is working. This is increased our response rates by 3 times, 4 times. Although I wonder whether the novelty is starting to wear out. People are aware that it's a bot, and is it that they now want to sort of go back to a real person with a pulse?
I don't think the bot itself was the problem. The problem was that we're sending like 5 messages a week. And although people did sign up for that, we were like, okay, you're gonna get 5 messages a week. They were like, sure, fine. And then after 3 messages, they were like, I don't want to have any of that. No, we actually haven't shied away from our bot. We still use ours. Actually, just reminded me, I forgot to use it today. But every time when we have our show, we send like a little message on the bot, and we always get some positive responses. I think the messenger bots, they're still good. It's just, I would say, out of everything you can do on the internet, is the one where you have to be the most careful with. I mean, if I post something on my Facebook wall, you can just ignore me, no problem, no harm done. You know, they're just like, oh, that guy's an asshole, and then they move on. If you put something on YouTube, I mean, chances are nobody's gonna see it anyway, so no harm done. But if you're sending somebody a message in their real messenger inbox, it better be, you know, like on point, like tonality wise, value wise, timing wise. So I would recommend anybody and most businesses still to go for chatbots, but every message you send, you better think about it. Like, am I gonna make the receiver's day a little bit better, or am I gonna distract them from something useful and annoy them? And really consider that before you message, and to really pay close attention to the feedback that you're getting and be ready to adjust both in volume, tonality, and just like the what is it that you're sharing on the message.
Yeah, no, I think that's really sound advice. I mean, the way that I've been phrasing it a lot lately is, you know, it's great to humanize your technology, but don't do it at the risk of dehumanizing your brand. And, you know, I've seen instances where companies have let go of customer support because they've managed to triage a lot of that technical support with bots. And you know, that's great, but at the end of the day, you know, people want to know that they can actually speak to a real person. And I think you're right that if you're using that technology, you've got to make it. I think when you're talking about the tonality of it, it's you know, making it personable, making it real, and not relying on it exclusively.
Uh, my opinion on this or any marketing tool is you got to remember what it is that your company is all about. Like, what is it that makes you good? You know, what are your unique selling points? And are you using technology to potentiate that, to make it more powerful and to amplify it? Or are you using your technology in a way that actually diminishes those unique selling points? So let's say your brand is built on being super personable and friendly and smiley faces. You most likely don't want to just switch 100% to messenger bots because you're going to lose some of that. But is your brand about the automation and you know, like giving clever solutions to people and allowing them to be a little bit more efficient? Sure, I don't think it's going to harm your brands to automate some of that communication. Just like any other tool, it's just like, okay, how does it fit within your ecosystem? Does the tactic map out the overall strategy and the vision or not?
Yeah. So, and you know, because it's a good time to talk about, you know, where, you know, what does 2020 look like? You know, as we're wrapping up Q4, automation for sure is something that, you know, we saw a lot of in 2019, and I think that's going to continue in 2020. Do you have any sort of favorite tools when it comes to automation?
So I think within automation, there's really important to distinguish between like the white hat and the gray or black hat kind of automation, right? So, for example, a really good example of like the black hat automation was Jarvee or Mass Planner. That tool was huge, 2017, 2018. I know some people that build a company doing like, I think it was like 100,000 per month, only selling Mass Planner services, but the tool got shut down a couple of months ago. It doesn't work at all anymore. Right. At least not on Instagram where people were using it. So I thought that was a great tool as long as it worked. And my favorites that category would probably be something like Growth Leads or Reconnect, which are two really good LinkedIn outreach tools that I like a lot. But on the white hat side, my favorite automation tool is for sure Zapier, just because it allows everything else to talk to each other.
Yeah. I ever since I discovered Zapier, and that goes back about a couple of years, man, and to this day, I mean, I just think that they have really found that pocket of connecting everything, just everything, right? And the potential automations are just out of this world. And again, you're right. That's white hat. And we should probably just, you know, for the audience, distinguish what we're really meaning when we're saying black hat, white hat, right? So my interpretation of that is like, where, you know, the black hat is kind of like a lot of those sort of behind the scenes, automated, let's say SEO tricks, where, you know, where machines are doing a lot of the dirty work and gaming the system for you. Whereas white hat is like, they've got nothing to hide in terms of what they're doing. I don't know. How would you sort of make that distinction?
I would say white hat is when you do things the way the platforms want you to do them, and it's ultimately in everybody's benefit. I would say gray hat is when you make a platform do something that it doesn't want to do, but it's still in everybody's benefit. You know, you're building your own business and you're offering value to somebody else. And black hat, I would say, is when you're making a platform do something it doesn't want to do, and at the same time you're actually harming somebody else. So the more like scammy stuff, you know, like those, you know, there's hot singles in your neighborhood kind of
stuff. Yeah. I think that's actually a great distinction. Is you know, in full compliance with the platform objectives, rules, and regulations, because exactly they can't monitor all of that behavior all of the time. So that's probably a great way to make that distinction. Yeah.
So in terms of trends, I think that the more gray hat stuff is gonna it's so what you always see, and this is what Jarvie and Mesmer are great examples. At the beginning, they were kind of like rudimentary in what it could do. They got more and more and more and more complicated and effective, and then they shut it down. So what I'm seeing for the tools that's working on LinkedIn and probably also YouTube, that they're getting more and more complicated to the point where they're going to be shut down soon enough. It's right when the results you get from this get on the same level as doing paid advertisements, that they always get cut down. So my prediction for 2020 is most of the automation stuff for LinkedIn and similar, I mean, the gray hat stuff is going to be shut down, I believe. And then there's going to be increased functionality for the white hat stuff. So the LinkedIn ads are going to get better. We're going to see some more LinkedIn functionalities, like stuff that we haven't even thought of yet. That's kind of what I'm expecting the trends.
Well, I think that's a very legit, and that's somewhat in line with something that I had said when I was asked this question on a panel a couple of days ago, that I thought, 2020 was going to be a year of sort of reality checks. And precisely exactly what you're talking about. The thing is that, we had, these, you had a bunch of people basically gaming these platforms, which is what, was the cause of this rise of vanity metrics gone wild, that were completely bogus, that weren't real, and that were creating this sort of false sense of social proof, popularity, that wasn't really there in many cases, and it killed organic. And I think the platforms, exactly, I think that's why you're right on the money, is the platforms themselves have said, this is killing our actual business model, because what we want is real engagement, right? It's not really in our benefit in the long run. I think they're realizing that too. I think it worked for them for a while, and that it was driving all this business.
Yeah, and Instagram is even getting rid of likes now. So like the whole thing is a little bit interesting. But if I'm perfectly honest, I'm not too worried about 2020. I mean, the world is moving very fast, but I'm definitely more interested in where we're going to be at in 10 years. One thing I'm noticing, and I'm pretty young, and even during my lifetime, things have changed a lot. So I have a smartphone now, and I had one since I was 12 or something. But I remember the time before, and if I'm if I'm making predictions for the future, what I think is that all the tools are going to become smarter. I think most of our job, most of marketing stuff is just going to be AI. In the beginning, you're going to have one tool that's going to do all YouTube and Google SEO stuff, and probably also a lot of the content creation. We're going to have one AI tool that's going to run all our ads for us. And I think what's going to happen is people are just going to buy the specific AI from the person that they like the most. So you will sell the same AI tool as I'll be selling, but you're much more handsome than me, so they will want to buy it from you because they trust you. And somebody else might like be better, and they will buy it from me. So I think the personal brand thing is going to be the main positioning factor, because I think everybody's going to have exactly the same capabilities.
I'm not convinced that. I think the buff Harry Potter is much more believable than me. So who knows? We'll see. We'll see who buys our AI. But which reminds me, by the way, that was something that I saw you do years ago, and I haven't seen you repost it or do anything. Was that video? That music video. Do you remember? Like, that goes back like about at least 2 years ago. You put out this like music video.
Yeah, but I didn't make that. I just took it and put my name on it and said I made it. That's a joke, but people didn't get it.
Oh, hold on. I thought you were in it.
No, I wasn't.
No?
No, I just edited myself in like the first 10 seconds.
Oh, you put yourself into. Okay, I totally fell for it. That's okay. That makes sense. That's why I haven't seen that come up again. I was like, oh, okay, hey, cool. That was actually a pretty slick video. I was like, oh.
Yeah, that was nice. A big budget. And then my next a prediction is, so what I'm seeing is the velocity of change is increasing.
Yeah.
So not only are things changing fast, they're changing faster and faster. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot, because basically the human bandwidth for dealing with change is limited. So you can only take in so much information, compute so much information, and then take so much action. So in my opinion, there's going to be, mostly on a personal development and a professional development standpoint, is there's going to be more and more value on creating, understanding, and using overarching frameworks. So if you have a big picture framework of how marketing works, of how psychology works, about how lead generation works, you will be able to just mix and match the tools as they change, and still be safe, because you just have a really good understanding of how does marketing work. The people that are caught up on tactics, that just know how to do one thing, I think they're all going to basically die. I mean, in a professional sense.
Yeah.
So I believe so much in getting the best overarching frameworks and learning to apply them. So the growth hacking framework, which is basically like have a hypothesis, run an experiment, look at your results and adjust based on those results. I think that those kind of frameworks are just going to become more and more important. And that's also the stuff I'm personally interested in learning now.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. I mean, that was my concern about seeing a number of people become, fixed on one individual platform. Because the trend that I see is that each generation sort of has its own. They don't want to be on the same platform that their parents were on. So like right now, I would say, like, just as that's what Instagram was to Facebook, and that's what TikTok now is to Instagram, right? It's another. So they're going to keep on. So you can't really just pigeonhole yourself into one strategy, one platform. I think you're right about the overarching framework and understanding of everything. I think what you're also referring to there is what is referred to as Moore's law, which is exactly that sort of exponential rate of technological growth.
Yeah.
And I've heard experts say that, oh, well, maybe that's not so true. It seems to be diminishing. And yet that's not my experience at all either. Like, if anything, it just seems to go faster and faster and faster. It's very difficult to keep up. And that's where, actually, when you talk about 10 years from now, that is where I have a concern. It's in particular, actually, from a governance perspective. Right? Like, how is it, like, we're in a weird sort of time where the technology is moving way faster than traditional government institutes can develop policy to handle them. So most governments don't really have much policy in place when it comes to artificial intelligence technology, and I would say reproductive technology. Those two fields are just, advancing, where we're able to kind of do anything we want with. And by the way, I don't know if you caught this story that this goes back almost a month now, that NASA had, because there's this relationship between NASA and Google, and where they monitor these servers on behalf of Google, and they said, oh, they've achieved quantum what's the
quantum computing?
No, quantum superiority. Well, it's with a superiority or something along that line. It was like there's a race for, it is quantum computing, but it's quantum superiority, and then they took it down. And they probably, Google was like, nope, we don't want anyone to know. But I agree that this, the AI is going to, it has risks associated with it. It has great benefits associated with it too. But how do we govern that? And what do you do when the companies that probably have the technological solutions to manage that are somewhat having monopolies? Yeah. That's what scares me, the 10-year outlook.
And yeah, one thing I was listening to the other today probably on this podcast, the H3 podcast, and they were talking about. Have you heard about these deep fakes? So deep fake is when they use like some kind of software that you and I can just download and install that allows you to put one person's face on another body, and it's basically indistinguishable.
Yeah.
And they use it for funny stuff. Like they made George Lucas review like the newest Star Wars trailer that was
Hmm.
hilarious. But they also take porn and put like Emma Watson on it, and
Right.
there's no loss. Like
Yeah.
how like there's no loss because when would they have made these laws? And who would have been like, oh, we should make a law just in case somebody makes AI technology that allows you to seamlessly put one person's face on another moving video. Like nobody had thought about this, and that is not even that's not even Google. You know, I could become a weird pervert and install that tonight and learn it over the next week, and there's
Yeah.
no laws to stop me.
Yeah.
It's a
Well, and
perfectly legit concern.
Adobe this presentation, and now also going back like a year ago for just voice,
Yeah,
where
that's
they
crazy.
could get you to say anything. All they needed was about maybe 3 to 8 minutes worth of you talking, and then they could get you to say anything.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like, hey, look at what we can do, and everyone was like, no, So um, yeah, we're entering into a brave new world of that. Exactly. Their text to voice capabilities, Google and I think Amazon have stepped up that game. So a lot of that stuff opens up Pandora's box of what can be done. And same, like
Yeah.
I said, with the reproductive. I mean, I started watching this show the other day, with CRISPR and these guys basically like this guy's sending out. He worked for NASA for a while, and now he's opened his own business where he's sending out, these little kits that you can do your own genetic modification testing out of your basement.
It's
And this
crazy.
guy's working to make like fluorescent dogs just as a proof of concept.
Yeah.
Like,
So if you wanted to build legislation around these kind of things, you would need to have so because usually what happens first is there's like some kind of consensus, and then people create laws from the consensus, but the technology changes too fast for people to form opinions about them. So
yeah,
what you would need is a superior ethics that can deal with unknown situations. But if we ever get to the point where we have ethics mapped out effectively enough to have a universal ethics, AI will already have taken over and it will be too late. We will not figure out ethics before sooner than we can program it into AI. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm pretty sure about that.
no, I mean, I don't know that there is. Yeah, I mean, ethics is a philosophical sort of discussion that's been going on, certainly for thousands of years. And how do we? And it's not. There's no clear cut answers, right? I exactly, like it gets a little scary when you start to the idea of like, okay, what would be the prime directive of robots and artificial intelligence? And if you said, well, make everybody happy, then the robots would just round us all up and fill us up with dopamine, right? And we'd all be just drugged out, going, yeah, and they'd be mission
Yeah,
accomplished.
or shoot us because the average would be 0 instead of -3.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Have
Yeah.
you read
So,
this book, Life 3.0?
no, no.
You got to read this one.
Oh yeah.
It's by this guy named Max Tegmark,
Okay.
and he basically explains in very great detail all the possible scenarios he can see for AI emerging, like broad AI emerging, and the different ways society could handle it. Talks about this sort of stuff. Like, I mean, AI is good at fulfilling a goal. It's probably not good at picking which goal is good goal. So and the thing is that it rewrites itself. That is what makes it AI.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can it's super difficult to.
That's a trend that's driving me nuts. Is I get these calls or these people reaching out saying, "Hey, we've got this AI solution," and that's not it's not AI. It's not real AI. Like exactly what you're talking about is machine learning, like where it rewrites itself, it teaches itself, it chooses its own path. And that's the thing is and on that stuff, exactly, even the developers themselves don't really know how it's doing what it's doing, because it's just algorithms built on top of algorithms. They didn't really write the whole thing. But I get all these people like, it's like they say, they explain what it does to me, and then I'm like, so you've just created an automated process.
Yeah. One thing that was interesting, we did like a cold outreach campaign for somebody. Part of their value proposition is that they use AI. And in our copy, there was a whole bit about how people are afraid of AI, but they shouldn't be. And I was like, that part of the copy is useless. I'm going to split test it, take it out. It worked much better when it was in there. So people were, but I thought like people don't give a fuck about this, but they actually did. Like having that part in there, like you shouldn't be afraid of AI, actually worked.
Interesting. Well, I mean, people want, I guess it goes back to, what I've talked about for a long time is the economy of authenticity. And by that, I mean, that authenticity is a currency that is appreciating in value. And so if you gloss over the potential negatives, then they feel like they're being sold something. That would be that would be my guess of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's just also it's a word people don't really understand. I mean, I read a whole book about AI, the Life 3.0 one, and I saw probably like 30 hours of podcast about it, and I would say it's still a pretty vague concept in my head. And if you think like most people will probably not spend that amount researching it, so how scary and weird is it for them? Pretty scary and weird, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, well, I mean, first you get, certain movies like, Terminator or whatever, where you've got things coming around and then that there are certain countries that are working on those super cop robots. I'm thinking about was 2000 what was the movie 2000? I forget what year they had put it on, like 2010 Odyssey or whatever it was, which is already like on, right? Where George, or what was I forget the name of the robot too. But exactly, it starts to make decisions for itself. So that's one of the things that and the thing is that already here's how I describe it. When people say, well, where are we with that technology? And I say, we're at horse. And the reason why I say that is as follows: was back when I was studying psychology, there was this interesting case study of this horse that people like, even the trainer themselves.
Oh yeah, no.
You know this one, right? Where they thought that the horse could count.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until some qualified psychologists came and started to do some proper experiments where they realized that the horse was able to really just pick up on subtle cues that the trainer would give, so that when they hit the number, they said count to 12, and they go clock, 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 keep on going to 12. The trainer themselves wasn't even aware that they gave a little micro gesture in their face that told the horse that he was done. So he wasn't really counting, or he wasn't really performing math, even though they thought he was.
That's interesting.
And so this is in line with an experiment that I saw of, maybe about a year ago, of this little robot that these guys were playing with. It had 4 arms, and its objective was learn how to walk. And then it does. And then they chop off one of its arms to see what it'll do, and it adapts. And so they were preparing it for a demo, and so when they're doing that, they can plug it into a machine to see, like, basically what does its neural net look like? Where's its concentration of effort? And they saw this big concentration around this one area, so they're like, well, what is it doing there? And it chose to train its cameras on the experimenters' faces, because it determined that was a very valuable data point. In other words,
see if they were happy with the walking.
See if they were happy with the walking. It was in the same way that the horse was able to pick up micro gestures. This robot had determined that the facial expressions of the experimenters was a useful data point for it.
Huh. That's
So,
interesting.
yeah. So that's why I kind of compare the two and say, as well, how far these things come. But the thing is people don't realize, I guess, one is that when you make this technology, when you give it an objective, it might be a little sloppy at first, but then when it catches up to once it gets going, it's better than us in every time. Maybe we say, oh, it'll never beat us in chess, and then it greatest grandmaster, and then, well, not Go, and then it beats the greatest grandmaster, right?
Yeah, I watched this debate between Elon Musk and Jack Ma, and Jack Ma said, "No, we will always be smarter than computer." And then Elon Musk does this story like, "Yeah, so a computer learned to play Go in like 4 hours and came up with a strategy that's never been recorded ever in the history of Go, and defeated the best player of all time with absolutely no problem." And then Jack Ma says, "Ah, yes, but I would never play Go with a computer. That's not smart." He said something along those lines. And when I was listening to it, I was like, what a kind of idiotic thing to say. But then I realized, actually, I mean, you'd have to be pretty stupid to think you can beat the computer at Go and chess. So, I mean, he had a point. It was a little bit of a weird point, but so it's like, sure, whatever it is that you can pick, the computer will eventually be better at it, you know?
Yeah.
But competing with the computer is not what you probably should be trying.
Well, so back to our industry, though, when we talk about marketing, this is where I think, the AI is definitely going to, is going to displace a lot of jobs, in the sense that it is, the AI will, is learning and will continue to learn how to game our emotions better than we can ourselves. And it'll say, okay, it'll just run out, here, test out a whole bunch of images, open up your camera, have a look at what, how your face reacts, and say, oh, okay, we know which ones really hit the button and which amount of text, and the advertising will become automated.
Yep. But ultimately, I still believe that people want to buy from a person. So that's what that comes back to my earlier remark. I think there's 50 years in the future, there's going to be like one AI doing all marketing stuff, and you and I are going to sell it to people who don't understand this, and then they're going to either like you more or me more. That's going to be it. And we're going to use the AI to use our face to sell to the people. I really believe it's going to be. I always forget it's going to be commoditized, right? And because there's no way you and I can comprehend the amount of data and make the adjustments as the computer potentially could.
Right.
I'm not saying they're there now. And it's even like associations, right? Like it could scan all the movies ever and figure out the perfect reference to Pulp Fiction for the thing I'm selling that I would have never thought about, because I prefer to watch Barbie movies. I mean, adult, but.
Okay, so carry out the scenario, though. So you and I have now gone around and sold this AI to a whole bunch of businesses. Now you've got a whole bunch of businesses for every sort of product and service that's out there, and it's all competing with itself, running all the businesses, right?
Yeah.
And so then I do agree with you that there's the thing about, there's a creativity in humanity that I don't think machines can quite mimic, and an ingenuity. And then two, there's a connectivity to it. At the end of the day, you and I are the ones who are making and spending money. We're the only ones who actually value the money. I don't know that the machines ever will.
Exactly.
In that regard,
we are programmed to like people.
Exactly. We're programmed to be community focused and seek connectivity and so forth. So I agree that there's always this, that at the end of the day is sort of the heart of things. But Yeah, no, I don't know. It's a really interesting stuff. But let's move there a bit, because community, because I know you're sort of big on community development. Um, you've got a very engaged community, especially over on both on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Well, not as much as before. Actually, I'm gonna open up a slides that gonna help me make
Sure.
my point a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
So just give me one quick second.
Yeah, take your time. You can do a little share
So
screen.
something I've been thinking about a lot is so as you know, my value proposition is I help executives and founders become LinkedIn thought leaders. And LinkedIn thought leader is basically a LinkedIn influencer without the bikini. And I've been doing this for myself for many years. And then I've copy pasted all the actions that happen on my profile to the client's profile. And from the beginning, we've seen some success with this. Like this has generated leads. This has gotten people all sorts of opportunities. But previously, I didn't manage to get it to the same level of results as my own personal account has been doing. And this has puzzled me for many months, well, for about a year. What I figured out was the only thing different on my accounts was that I was making building one-on-one relationships with the right people, and then I got access to their network. Yeah, I'm gonna just share my screen for a second. So this I think is a very. Can you see my screen?
At the moment, it's just right now. It's just said that you started to share it, but it's there we go. Okay, it's there. I see it.
So what you can see here is how people organize themselves within the community as it relates to content creation. You have about 1% of the people creating content and putting out original thoughts. These are the people that have the most visibility, the most respect, and most recognition. Then you have about 9%, the green ones, that mostly engage with the 1% and kind of like regurgitate, reshare those same ideas. So they might write a post, but basically they're just copy pasting what the 1% is saying. And then you have about 90% of the people who are basically just lurking. So they're looking and they're not even engaging. So the 9%, they're actually doing most of the engaging. They're commenting on stuff, commenting on each other's stuff, having conversations. And the 90%, they don't do any of that. Now the thing is, the money in terms of how much money these people have is not distributed the same way. This guy is very likely richer than this guy, right? There's no reason why this guy would have any less money than this person.
Gotcha.
So what happens is within a community of people that know each other, a network. So a community is a network that has a common value. So or a common sense of identity. So let's say this is a community. If this person here, let's call him John, needs help with becoming a LinkedIn influencer, he will ask somebody that he knows, this guy. But that guy probably doesn't know anything about it. So he'll be like, oh, actually, I know this guy that knows a lot about marketing, Julian. So this is you. He asked Julian, hey, Julian, my friend, he needs to generate leads on LinkedIn. Wants to be a LinkedIn thought leader. Can you help? You're like, and then you'd be like, oh, actually, I know this guy, Stapho. Well, actually, you're also 1%er, but just for let's say for a second that you don't create content. So that person trusts you, and you trust me, and that is how value has traveled through the network, where I can now make a deal with John. He will give me money. He will give me money, and I will give him services. Right? What I figured out was that there's actually a bunch of these 1%ers, right? Because I have about 14,000 connections. So I think that means there's 140 of these people in my network. So what happens is I want to be in the middle here. I want to be here, and I want to be connected to all these 1%ers who have a similar audience as me, but different services. So if this guy asks for LinkedIn, he will go to this guy, he will go to this guy, he will go to the 1%er, but this is you now, and you have your marketing academy, and you have your ads and stuff, but you don't do LinkedIn cold outreach, and you will refer them back to me. And this is what makes the difference between a really big LinkedIn influencer or thought leader and somebody who's just talking to nobody, making content and talking to nobody. Because these one-on-one relationships, they bring the attention and the resources with them. So if I post and these 1%ers engage with it, they'll bring their own 9%ers with them, and that will create visibility towards the whole, to all the pyramids. So if you can have 150 of these pyramids, you're going to have a really big audience. And the reason I'm capping it out at 150 is because you have a thing called the Dunbar number, which explains how many close relationships you can really maintain. And it goes between 50 and 150 people. And 150 is really pretty much the absolute max of real personal relationships you can maintain. So if you spend your time on LinkedIn, you really cannot maintain more than, let's say, 40 to 100 real relationships, because you got to know some people in real life too. But if you choose those 100 people carefully, and they're 1%ers, you have got access to their entire networks as well. And the referrals and the money and the attention streams upwards through these pyramids towards you. And that is kind of like what we're changing now in my company, is how do we bring our clients in contact with those other 1%ers so that they can benefit and have a mutually beneficial relationships with all these different communities. So it goes both ways. That's what I've been thinking about.
Well, that's very funny, and that's something actually that's very much in line with a post that I did just a week ago or so, taking a little aim at this idea of everybody becoming a thought leader. It's like, if everyone's becoming a thought leader, then who's following them, so it was a little tongue in cheek, right? And that I did this video with myself, calling myself the #1 global thought laggard. And somebody had this comment on it, saying, this may not make you very popular in social media, but I like it. And the thing is that and this is what I gauge when I gauge, how are people reacting. It's not, I don't really pay much attention to the number of likes, nor do I pay much attention to the little quick one-off comments of "this is great," and that's all they say. I know that I've touched on something that's hit a nerve when people are writing lengthy, engaged comments, sometimes where the comment is even longer than my post itself. Then I know that I've really hit. And that's what this one did. And then the other thing that gave me sort of an indication that, and again, it was all mostly positive. And then the other thing that I kind of found as an interesting trend was that it must have obviously been trending in that thought leadership or personal brand hashtags, because you get people with these lengthy comments, and then all of a sudden you get brands. All of a sudden I get logos and stuff like that.
I think what you said really makes a lot of sense. There's a couple of really interesting things about the topic that you just mentioned. First is that a very small amount of people actually do creative endeavors throughout their life. I forgot how much it was, but it was something like 80% of people have never consciously decided to do something creative, meaning painting, writing, and all those kind of stuff. So even if it looks to us who are on the scene that everybody wants to be a thought leader, it's not more than 20% of people. So that I think is super interesting. And the second thing that I think is super interesting is that for me, a thought leader is somebody who manages to express the thoughts before other people express it, but they already have the same thought. So you get frustrated with so many people just chasing the thought leadership without actually having the expertise to go with it, right? That's probably a part of the frustration that you were being tongue in cheek about.
Yeah.
Or
it's just these buzzwords that you just keep on hearing over and over and over again. Exactly. It's like, well, why are you creating a video? That's why are you talking about personal branding? Why are you talking about thought leadership? Yeah. But
exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So you are thinking that, and lots of other people are thinking that. But the people that your message clicks with are the ones that have thought it and haven't been able to say it yet, or not express it to the same level of finesse that you managed. And so thought leader is not necessarily, but sometimes if you're really a true visionary, true genius, you're thinking stuff other people have not thought about at all. But most of the time, it's just that you're the first to really express
articulate it. Yeah, exactly. To articulate it correctly. I think you're absolutely right. And one of the comments that certainly came out of through all of that was that thought leaders are often also followers themselves. Most great leaders have mentors. But man, this is, and I knew this would happen with you, right? Is that, I geek out with you. I probably took up just as much. I didn't interview you so much as I probably talked just as much as you did. But this is what happens when someone like you and I talk. And I'm realizing that, we've been going, it's getting pretty late here. So I'll wrap this up really quick and just say thank you so much for coming on the show, finally, to have you on the show. Really excited to have you on. I think we're going to have to do it again one time.
Well, you'll be on my show soon. So,
yes,
so soon enough, I'll be having another chat. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for coming on. Talk to you soon.